We bring in Joel Klatt, the awful Joel Klatt, at Joel Klatt on Twitter. Joel, how much it's weird because usually we have a lot of time after the the national the conference championship games before we get all the way to this, like 5 weeks, right? But because the season was pushed back, it was boom, we have the title games on the 19th. And then I felt like the games got pretty quick, January 1. And now, hey, here's the end of the season, and we've got Alabama going up against Ohio State. It just kind of feels different. I think there's people out there listening to us right now that just because of the discombobulated year that we've had, basically in the world of sports and everywhere else, that and I think probably the NFL having the double wildcard days on Saturday, Sunday, even more games, I feel like this college football game is going to sneak up on a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, I've never understood why they thought Monday night was a great night.
I agree.
I understand. Like they do it in March Madness and they do it for the Final Four in the basketball national championship. But remember, you're not really coming off of much at that point. What's going on that weekend of the Final Four? Not much.
Right.
And so you get the build-up of Sunday for the Monday night's national championship game. And I just don't feel like you get that in football. And I feel like in some cases they sit around and wait in order to get one-upped by the NFL. Like You cannot sit behind the NFL and think that you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. I really believe that they should go Friday night before the divisional rounds. I think people would go ballistic for like a Friday night national
I love that idea. I love that.
And I think that we've got plenty of time to do that. I mean, they're sitting around for 11 days. So, I mean, what's 9 days? I don't understand why. So I've never loved the Monday night, in particular after playoff football. I feel like it gets lost a little bit. And then all of a sudden on Sunday night and Monday, people are like, oh, yeah, that's tonight. And I don't think that that's good for the sport.
All right, let's dive into this matchup in particular. First of all, as a quarterback who took a lot of big hits in your career at Colorado, Justin Fields, the hit that he took from Skalski, the helmet right into the ribs or the spleen or the kidney or whatever it is. Did it make you cringe watching it when you saw that hit?
Oh, I mean, more than cringe. It made me want to run and take some Advil, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe something stronger than Advil.
You were already thinking about what he's going to feel like when he wakes up the next day. I mean, it hurt then, but yeah.
Sure. And first I'm thinking to myself, he's done. To me, there were only two outcomes, and I don't want to speculate, so I'm not trying to suggest that this is what happened, but immediately I'm thinking to myself, he either broke multiple ribs or his spleen is ruptured. That's how bad it looked, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, he's done. And when he could barely throw, barely move after that, I thought that even for his own safety, they needed to take him out, and he battled through it. They obviously patted him up, gave him some of that magic, and he got back out there. I don't know how healthy he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be 100%. I can tell you that from a quarterback standpoint, your core is so important to everything that you do. And that's where you develop all your velocity. That's where, and in particular, a guy like him that's athletic that needs to have his feet and be able to utilize his feet as a weapon. I just am very skeptical that he's going to be 100% tonight. I feel like very skeptical on that.
So if he's not 100%, can they in any way beat Alabama by relying on their running game, which has emerged resurgent in the last couple of weeks, last couple of games, I should say?
They handled Clemson, and he was more one-dimensional. It's not like he was a threat running the football after that, and they killed Clemson. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
That was not that close of a football game, and I think that gave everybody, including me. I mean, I cover Ohio State, and I was like, wow, that's easily the best game that they've played. So that run game is really good. And their offensive line and Trey Sermon and even a guy like, Master Teague or some of their backups, and I don't know if Master Teague will be available, but to me, I just think that they're such a better rushing team than people believe. Like, if I were to tell you they are the number one Power 5 rushing team in the country, would that surprise you?
Yes.
Well, they are, right?
Yeah.
And I think it does surprise a lot of people. And so let's not be all that shocked if they are able to run the football fairly effectively on Alabama, because it's not like Alabama's defense is 5 years ago from Nick Saban or 6 years ago. I think that Ohio State will be able to move the ball regardless of if Fields can run around, and I think that they're going to be able to score some points.
How many do they need to score to beat Alabama?
I think they need to score 45 or more. That's how good I think Alabama's offense is, and that's how concerned I am for the secondary for Ohio State. Did you know that Ohio State's pass defense is the worst pass defense to play in a national championship game in the playoff era?
I didn't know that. I mean, yeah, that's because Oklahoma's been in a few years, so I would think that there's been some
in the championship game.
Well, that's a good point.
So they had been in the playoff, but to make it the actual championship game, 281 yards a game they're giving up. It would be the worst year in the history of Ohio State as far as pass defense goes. And they're about to face what I would deem as one of the best passing attacks, ever. Maybe, second or third in history behind, the LSU group from a year ago, maybe one of those Oklahoma groups, especially under Baker Mayfield. But they're going to be under siege, and I don't see a way for Ohio State to hold Alabama under 42, 45 points.
You got Devontae Smith, who I think you said deserved to win the Heisman Trophy. Do you think Jaylen Waddle is going to come back, and how unbelievable of a return would that be? And here's why I ask you that question. For people out there who don't know, Jaylen Waddle was hurt in the 5th game of the season. Through 4 weeks, he had more receiving yards and the same number of touchdowns as Devontae Smith. He and Devontae Smith are both studs. So I know some people out there are not huge college football fans that may not have watched him. But I just keep sitting back, Joel, and I'm saying, man, Nick Saban, if he were actually going to have Jaylen Waddle, wouldn't you want to keep that quiet and then suddenly have Jaylen Waddle come out at your, in your warm-ups and in your practice and be on the field, as opposed, if you were actually going to use him in a substantial way, as opposed to letting basically the news get out there that he's at practice, that he's cleared, that he may be able to go? This feels like Nick Saban, to me, trying to get everybody on the Ohio State coaching staff, Ryan Day and company, to prepare for something that he may not use very much. It just doesn't feel like Nick Saban to be like, oh, by the way, hey, guys, we've got this great weapon that nobody's really seen in several weeks, and he's going to come back. It's like this is everything that Nick Saban would ordinarily not give you. It feels like disinformation.
Well, and whether he's on the field or not, you've got to question at least his percentage. I mean, he fractured his ankle, for God's sakes, right?
In October.
Yes, and so I don't see how he's himself. Now, to be fair, and to your point when you started the question, if he doesn't get hurt, I think that Waddle might be a better prospect in the NFL draft, which is shocking because Devontae Smith is outstanding.
Yes. And I don't think Devontae Smith wins the Heisman, by the way, Joel, because I think the numbers would have gotten split more with Jaylen Waddle, and either Mac Jones or who knows, Trevor Lawrence might have ended up being able to back away his way. In other words, it wouldn't have all coalesced around Devontae Smith because his numbers wouldn't have been as impressive if Jaylen Waddle stays healthy.
I mean, I don't normally do this, but that is a very astute and accurate point, Clay.
There you go. I've blown you away
when that happens. Well, I don't think it blew me away. I'm just admitting when it was accurate. There's no question Devontae doesn't win the Heisman. So, but to your point about Saban and whether I just don't see how he's himself, Waddle. I just don't. And because of that, I think that you're probably going to get the game plan that you would have normally gotten in this game, which is some sort of Shaun Wade following Devontae Smith around. Now, Shaun Wade is the best corner that Ohio State has. I think that he's probably a top 30, top 35 NFL draft prospect for this spring's draft. Having said that, there was only one Power 5 player in the country that gave up more touchdowns in coverage than Shaun Wade. He gave up 6. And so that's not a good matchup. Jahan Dotson from Penn State got all over him. Ty Freifogel from Indiana got all over him. Like I said, Ohio State's in some trouble, whether Waddle's on the field or not, when it comes to trying to defend that passing game.
Alabama wins, they're 13-0, and they will have beaten 13 FBS opponents, 11 in the SEC, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. They are, I believe, I'm curious what you think, not only an undisputed national champion, but one of the most impressive national champions of all time when you consider COVID, its impact, all the challenges, and the fact that they would have notched the most wins in the SEC by 2, right? Nobody's ever won more than 9 in the conference before, and then beaten 2 really good teams in Notre Dame and Ohio State to get to 13-0. Do you buy into toss away the asterisk or any other thing, like this is a legitimate, unquestionable champion if it's Alabama?
No doubt. There's no doubt about that. I was having this discussion with my guy Steve Owens. He helps me with all of my research during the year and during our games. And we were talking about this, and he was like, would they be considered, the best team ever? And I was like, they would, if LSU hadn't been so damn good last year.
Yeah.
No,
it's interesting.
And I think that LSU's performance a year ago, and in particular their quarterback's performance, I think throws a little bit of shade on this version of Alabama, because I don't think any of us believe that Mac Jones is better than Joe Burrow. And having said that, I don't want to take anything away from Alabama, because like I said, I agree with you. If they win, they're going to go this team probably won't get the recognition it deserves, but I think it would be a top 5, 6, 7 year of all time in college football because of what you just went through and because of just their explosiveness. This is such a interesting era where you don't have to have a great defense to be a great team. It used to be you had to be great everywhere and really balanced. But now you look at their ability to be balanced on offense. You look at that. There's never been a team sweep the awards like they swept the awards. Did you know that? No team has ever in history won the Heisman, the Biletnikoff, the Doak Walker, the
Johnny Unitas, or whatever,
the Outland, the Johnny Unitas. No one's ever done that.
Yeah.
And this team is certainly, one of the best offenses that I've ever seen.
All right, so flip side, Ohio State wins, goes 8-0. What do people say? What do we all say about this Ohio State team? Yes, they're the champion because they would have won the playoff. But when you look to the extent that you pay attention to how many games teams won, an 8-game winning national champion probably has, I don't know what, maybe in the 1915s or the 1920s it might have happened. What do people say about Ohio State?
Think about it this way. Let me just give you devil's advocate. No team in this era where Clemson and Ohio State have dominated have ever beat those two in the same season.
Clemson and Alabama, you mean? Beating them both of them in the same season. Yeah.
That's right.
No, there's no
got
question that they're
pretty special from that standpoint. So let me just say, it's not their fault, right? Like I understand people are pushing on this, like, oh, they're fresh, oh, they're this or they're that. Listen, football is a reps business. I think it's actually harder to do what they're trying to do than have the rhythm and know what you are. I still think to some extent they were trying to find themselves even all the way into that game with Clemson. The last time that they played back-to-back games was their second and third game of the year.
It's pretty crazy.
They have never gone back-to-back. So to some extent, they've never found their rhythm. They've never found all those reps for their execution, the detail-oriented nature that you've got to be to excel, in particular on offensive football. And you're starting to see that now after the Clemson game. So I don't think they're going to go down in history, right, like an Alabama would, but they would have beaten Clemson and Alabama in the same season in this era where no one's ever done that. And, Clay, I think that it's also interesting that they would, I think, pretty clearly, in particular with where they're recruiting, put themselves on that pedestal. College football for 6 years has been Alabama and Clemson. That's it, right?
Yep.
And now I think that they would be a clear third team in that conversation.
When you look at this matchup, what do you expect to see happen? All right. So, before I get to that, you and I talked a lot. I mean, it is going to feel great when toe meets the leather tonight, and we're able to enjoy the full fruition of the college football season being complete, right? I mean, they managed to do it when a lot of people said they could not. We talked earlier in this program about how remarkable it is that the NFL did, 16 games in 17 weeks, and then also rolled out and got 6 wild card games in on Saturday and Sunday. And I feel like you always have to knock on wood, given the fact of what this season has been like for every sport. But for college football, from the conversations you were hearing in July and June and August, to now find itself about to have a championship game, and then they will have managed no serious COVID-related issues for players, coaches, or that I've heard any of the fans that went to the games. They have managed to get it done. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
Well, I would say that both commissioners are going to be sitting there and so proud of what they've achieved. But in reality, I think that we know that Greg Sankey is the one that's going to come out of this looking the best moving forward. And I think to a bit of a lesser extent, Bob Bowlesby of the Big 12. Kevin Warren, first of all, I do not envy his job being a first-year commissioner this year. That's awful. Having said that, if it was just up to him, we wouldn't be here. That's just the truth of the matter. The fact that this game is happening, and I think in its totality, with all the conferences, with everybody available to it, really comes down to a couple of guys, and this is what's so wild. Obviously, I mentioned Greg Sankey, and then there's a couple of other ones too. Bob Bowlesby, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence. When Justin Fields runs out there, I don't care if you're an Alabama fan, I don't care if you're a Clemson fan, an Ohio State fan, a Michigan fan. There's a part of all of us as college football fans that need to just kind of tip our cap, because he is a major reason we are even having this game tonight. And I think that, from that standpoint, I'm really thankful for those people that push really hard. There was a Gallup poll done, actually, and this Gallup poll and study, it was really more of a mental health study, and it's not going to surprise you. Listen, mental health in our country deteriorated in 2020 as opposed to 2019. You're like, okay, great, Joel, like shocker. They measured 20 different sets of criteria or sets of people. There was only actually one of the 20 set of people that they said like their mental health didn't deteriorate, or actually it got better, and that was actually people that went to any sort of religious gathering weekly, which is wild, right? So that's for another conversation. But in a year in which our mental health has deteriorated so badly, I think of those consequences of not playing football for the players. I think of the consequences for not only these college football players that were trying to play this season, but for ones that were trying to play next season. I think of all the athletes throughout the country who would have had scholarships reduced in other sports that are non-revenue, both male and female. I think of the mental health deterioration of all of those athletes across the board. And I'm going to sit there and watch tonight, and I'm going to be thankful that we had a season. I'm going to be thankful that we got to this point, not only because we got to this point without any serious cases of problems, but also because we maintained some of those opportunities. Not all of them, but some of them, the vast majority of them. And so we are going to be able to put kids in college and have them compete in the sport that they love. And I think that that's better for everybody.
All right. Last question for you. And we're talking with Joel Klatt. You can go follow him on Twitter at Joel Klatt. What do you think happens tonight? What is your prediction for what the game looks like, for what the score might look like, and for what our lead discussion might be when we come in on Tuesday morning to break down everything that we saw?
I think you're going to have an incredibly high-scoring game. I think it's going to be explosive. And I think that Alabama is going to outlast them, because I think that Ohio State's defense is just not going to be able to hold up from a secondary perspective. I'm expecting 45-42. I'm telling just the ball flying all over the place. I think Alabama wins the game by 3, and I think that the biggest conversation that we're having afterwards is Mac Jones the third best quarterback in the draft? Is he going in the top 15? Is he going in the top 10? I think that's what we're going to be talking about.
All right, so you just made me ask another question there because of the quarterback situation. A lot of talk, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall. Do you think that Urban Meyer ends up in Jacksonville? And if he does, is there any doubt, regardless of who the coach is, that Trevor Lawrence goes number 1 overall? Would it be stunning beyond belief to you if somebody else went number 1 overall?
I would be pretty surprised if anyone else went number 1. I think that's pretty solidified. Now, having said that, I was questioning Justin Fields a little bit before the Clemson game on whether he would be the second quarterback or someone else would sneak up and get it, whether it was Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or whomever, right? And I think with that performance against Clemson, he absolutely solidified himself to the Jets. So I think that it's Lawrence 1, and I think Fields is going number 2.
And so for the people out there who are not huge college football fans, a little bit like the Super Bowl on a smaller level, a lot of people will watch this game and they'll watch, for thinking maybe they're NFL fans, like thinking about their team potentially taking a quarterback a little bit down later. You think both of these guys that are the signal callers here, Mac Jones for Alabama, Justin Fields for Ohio State, both really high draft picks. Because I think the Mac Jones part might surprise some people and maybe even encourage them to watch because they're thinking about whether their team might be going first-round quarterback.
To this point, Mac Jones has played himself into the first round. And I think with a stellar performance on this stage, I think he can play himself into the top half of the first round. He's been that good. If you are watching for a couple of things, watch one thing in particular with Mac Jones, his anticipatory throws. The fact that he gets the ball out of his hand before the wide receivers are out of their breaks constantly, and he's still very accurate with the football. And then the next thing that he does, he throws with unbelievable touch, not necessarily all the way down the field with just a huge arm, but the touch in terms of the intermediate zones. I call it a layered pass. Okay, when he layers the ball over the linebackers in front of the safety or over the defense and in front of the back of the end zone, he does that as well as anybody that I've seen in a long time. Those two things are things that really stand out to NFL decision makers.
Outstanding stuff as always, Joel. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you during the football season. Look forward to talking to you again sometime soon, and hope everybody out there enjoys the game.
You got it. See you, bud.